Welcome back to Locked On Horned Frogs. Fall camp starts today, folks. We've officially made it to football season. And Sonny Dykes spoke to the media. We still have a quarterback battle going on. We'll break that down next. This is Locked On Horned Frogs.
You are Locked On Horned Frogs, your daily podcast on the TCU Horned Frogs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Okay, Locked On Horned Frogs. I am Steven Simcox, your host. And friends, congratulate yourselves. Pat yourself on the back. Give a high five to somebody if you're listening with a friend in the car. Don't really know why you'd be listening to a podcast in a group setting. That's not typical. But if you are, we've made it. Congratulations. You have made it to the month of college football. We are officially in August. There will be college football games played this month. TCU, of course, doesn't start their season until September, but still, we are getting closer to the college football season, the TCU Horned Frog season, and TCU starts fall camp today on Tuesday as you're listening to this. On Monday, Sonny Dykes and a few players spoke to the media. And one thing that we've been discussing at length this offseason is this quarterback battle, right? Like, who's going to win? Max Duggan, Chandler Morris. Obviously, Max has a ton of experience. He has been inconsistent, but he's also tough-minded, has won some big games in his career, has led TCU, I think, really well, and has handled his, all the intangibles of being the quarterback of a Power 5 program extremely well, because he's basically been starting since he was a freshman. And then you have Chandler Morris, who is really intriguing with some of the physical gifts he has, had a fantastic game against Baylor, and that upset win over the Bears, and then sort of fell off the map against Oklahoma State, which, that Oklahoma State defense did that to a lot of players last season, a lot of offenses last year. And they've been duking it out. And during the course of the spring, it was really hard to get a read on who had the edge, if anybody had the edge. They're constantly trading reps. Coach Dykes and his staff made it known that just because somebody took most of the first team reps in a practice doesn't necessarily mean they had the edge in getting the job. But Sonny Dykes spoke at Big 12 Media Days, and he did a lot of speaking engagements because, of course, he goes through the car wash. You do like a sit down with the ESPN crew. You go up to the podium. There's breakout sessions. But in the breakout sessions, one thing that he mentioned was, hey, I want to make this decision, this quarterback decision, a few weeks before the season starts. Ideally, I'd like to name a quarterback a few weeks before the season starts. And that was a nice breath of fresh air for TCU fans, because the last few years, and just in general, Gary Patterson has been very secretive about his depth chart. And that's not necessarily unique to college football. I think the links that Gary goes to and the way he went about it was sort of unique in comparison to other programs. But hey, everybody wants an edge. They're trying to find an edge. And there's a common thought out there that if the opponent doesn't know who we're playing, who we're starting, then that can somehow be an advantage. I think to a certain extent, though, it worked as a detriment for the team because there were, long stretches of the season, even going into the year, where it wasn't really clear who the leader was, who the guy behind center was going to be. And so I was excited about that. And I said earlier this offseason, I really think best case scenario is that someone separates themselves and really takes the reins on this job. Just because it means someone did that, right? Like someone sort of got out of the fray and was the true leader of the team, was the clear QB1. Well, that hasn't happened yet. And I wouldn't go as far as to say Sonny backtracked today, but he spoke with the media, and the first thing he said about the quarterback situation was it might not just be a two-man race, which I'm not going to even entertain that notion. Okay, nice try, Sonny. He mentioned that Jared Goff at Cal was the fourth-string quarterback going into spring camp when he won the job. But Sam Jackson's not winning this job. I think he's a good player. I think he's a tremendous athlete. I hope one day he plays quarterback for TCU. I don't see it happening this year. And in my mind, like you're not putting the wool over eyes. It's a Max Duggan Chandler Morris battle. So I do think it's kind of concerning. Now we have fall camp to get through. I do think it's kind of concerning that no one has seemingly emerged. And he also said, and this was the part that sort of stood out to me today, that there was no deadline on naming a starter. And I guess he didn't set like a hard and fast rule at media days, but he just mentioned, hey, we'd like to have a decision a few weeks before the season. I don't have a great feel. I mean, if you forced me to make a decision today, I think Chandler Morris is the starter. But one thing that just stands out to me about Max Duggan, and it's something that Coach Dykes has said multiple times this offseason, and it's very possible I'm just making way too much of the statement, but it's just caught my attention. He's mentioned, like, hey, a big part of this is the team tends to know before the coaches know who the starter is. And a big component of the decision is who the team responds well to. And I don't know how the team responds to Chandler. I can't really speak to that because I haven't seen him play, in a lot of game situations. I think they respond to Max really well. And I think the intangibles that he can bring to the table are a big asset. Now, does that push him forward to get the job? Ultimately, I don't think it does, but it wouldn't shock me if he won it. I would love to, in a couple weeks say definitively, here's your starting quarterback, and it was made clear throughout the season that this guy, or through the offseason, that this guy was the best choice. I think that's the best case scenario for TCU football. Okay, when we come back, we have a roster update. We have some recruiting talk. But first, we need to talk about LinkedIn. As you gear up for the fall, if you're a hiring manager, if you own a small business, you need the right people on your team. Hiring is crucial. LinkedIn Jobs is here to make it easier to find the people you want to talk to. It's fast. It's free. You know LinkedIn. Everybody does. It's the biggest name, in this industry. Everyone has a LinkedIn account. It's a great way to network professionally. You can create a free job post in minutes. You can reach over 810 million people. It's the largest professional network in the world. Add your job to the hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile and spread the word that you're hiring so you can find the right people to hire. It's crucial. You have to have the right people on your team. They have simple tools like screening questions. That's going to make it easy to sort of weed out, some of the people that might not be a great fit. That's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs, they help you find candidates you want to talk to, and they do it faster. Every week, 40 million job seekers visit LinkedIn. This is the place to go if you need talent for your small business. LinkedIn Jobs, visit it today. Okay, continuing here on Locked On Horned Frogs. As I mentioned in segment 1, we're barreling towards football season. And TCU had sort of their last big hurrah. A lot of other schools did as well. Recruiting's not over, but with fall camp starting, with games getting going soon, that's not going to be the #1 priority for these coaching staffs. Game preparation is going to be. So, TCU had an event over the weekend called Riffram Day. And it mostly consisted of guys that were already committed, but they got to come, hang out, go to Coach Dykes' house. That's been a big component of the recruiting process, is hanging out with Sonny Dykes at his home, which I think is cool. It's a nice touch. It's very personal, obviously. They got to hang out at his house, hang out with other commits. And then there were a few uncommitted players there. And obviously TCU's trying to convince them to get on board. And they were able to land one 3-star corner, Vernon Glover Jr. From Dickinson High School, 5'11", 170. 3-star recruit according to 247 Sports, but has a really impressive offer list. Arizona State, Arkansas, Colorado, Texas A&M, among others. I think this is a dude that could rise through the rankings if he has a big senior season, given what he's done and just the offers that he has. He was an ESPN elite underclassman, Houston camp DB MVP in the spring of his sophomore year. It was a 24-6A first team all-district selection as a junior. So TCU having a really good week on the recruiting trail. And there were some other targets that visited this weekend. One name to watch over the next few days, Mikhail Harrison Pilot. And I know Mikhail a little bit because he plays at Temple, which is a high school program that I had the pleasure of covering for a few years in Central Texas. Quentin Johnston is a former Temple Wildcat. So is Jared Wiley, recent transfer to TCU. And Pilot for Temple, he's all over the field. I mean, he plays, he's a DB in the secondary, but he also plays a lot on offense, catching passes, run the ball in the backfield. They let him play QB in some Wildcat situations. He's a great athlete, and he's been recruited heavily by a lot of teams across the nation, but it feels like he's sort of zeroing in on TCU, Texas, and Houston. And so we'll see where that recruiting battle lands, but that's a big target that TCU is also looking into as Pilot approaches his senior year playing there for Temple. We'll see if he makes a decision soon. But overall, TCU with some nice momentum on the recruiting trail. Kalen Salter, the linebacker from Cedar Hill. Earlier this week, Cameron Cook, the 4-star running back from Round Rock Cedar Ridge. Nice little way to kind of close out the summer campaign by the Frogs and this coaching staff. Another thing that came down with fall camp coming around was updated roster on the TCU website, which it's fun to kind of comb through and see if there are any surprises, anything that really stands out. A few things that caught my eye. This is really just like a housekeeping note, but Chandler Morris is going to rock number 2 this season. He's been number 14 the past few years. He's going to rock number 2. He tweeted out a picture of Trayvon Boykin today. Seems like he wants to bring some of that swagger back. So that'll be fun to watch. And as far as, additions, subtractions, that kind of thing, a name I did not notice on the roster, DeMarquay Foster, the talented running back from Wichita Falls, Hershey. And Foster had a tough career. He was hurt a lot, but he's a really talented kid. So disappointed to see him moving on. I think Jeremy Clark was on this about a week ago, but since it's official now, we can kind of flesh it out and talk about it. I think TCU will be fine at the running back position. I mean, Kendra Miller, Amani Bailey, you got some talent coming in, but losing Foster is a hit. He's a guy that's dynamic, has a lot of speed, and there was always just that hope that he would sort of figure it out and put it all together. Did not come to fruition though, and injuries, unfortunately, were a big part of that. So that's sort of your TCU roster update as we head into the year. We're getting closer, guys, to football season. We're going to have some guests on this week, and we have Matt Jennings on later this week. We'll talk some TCU football with him. Locked On Horned Frogs, we're on YouTube. We're everywhere you get your podcast. Talk to you tomorrow. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team. It's every day.